Okay, Anna, I show that we are live on YouTube. Thank you very much for doing that. Okay, Mr. Lee, my co-presiding hearing examiner is not quite here yet. I'm still going to let the parties in just so they can do a mic check. And then just FYI, I think I'm going to have one preliminary item to chat about with the parties before we go on the record this morning. So just FYI. Good morning, everybody. It's a little early, about 10 till. Let everybody in so you can do a mic check. We won't get started until 9. My co-presiding hearing examiner should be with us momentarily.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Tolson.
Good
Thank
morning.
you. Good
Morning.
Morning. Everybody's coming through loud and clear. So we are live on YouTube. Feel free to turn your mics off, videos off. We'll come back in about 10 minutes. There'll be one small preliminary item I want to chat about with the parties before we go on the record, but that won't take very long.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Miss Lang, this is the court reporter. Can you pronounce your name for me, please?
Sure thing. My first name is Katie. It's spelled Kaythee. Last name is Hlaing, and it's the H is silent, so it's just Lang.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Thank you.
Let's see, let's do a mic check for the folks who just joined us, who I know are speaking. Did Mr. Yap just drop off? He was on, and then it looks like now all of a sudden he's gone. Hearing examiner Schaefer, can you, why don't you try your mic?
Check, John, check.
Works, looking good. I don't see Mr. Yap. He was on, he must have dropped off. Morning, Mr. Yap. Can you hear us, sir?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Okay, Mr. Lee, I think I have everybody. I'm going to go ahead and just address this one preliminary item before we go on the record.
Okey
So
doke.
not quite ready to go on the record. So Ms. Clifford and also Ms. Lang. So we were going through the exhibit lists, the revised exhibit list from Dish Wireless. Just one small thing. I noticed that Dish's 4 confidential exhibits were effectively on here twice. So as exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 8D, and then again as 9 through 12. And so just to clarify that process, and if you have any concerns with this, we can discuss it, but just to clarify the process, essentially what will happen will be there will be 2 different versions of those exhibits. There'll be a public version and then a confidential version, but they'll be admitted once. So they would be admitted as exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 8D. But then the confidential versions of that would only be available, confidentially per the protective order. Does that make sense?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, any other items we should discuss before we go on the record? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Lee, whenever you're ready, sir.
I'm ready.
Okay. Good morning. Time is now 9 a.m. And we are now on the record. This matter before the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission will please come to order. This is the time and place set for the public hearing in the matter of the petition of Dish Wireless for designation as an eligible telecommunications carrier in the state of New Mexico for the limited purpose of providing lifeline service to qualifying customers. This case has been docketed as case number 23-00115-UT. My name is John Kreinkamp. I'm joined this morning by Patrick Schaefer. The 2 of us are the hearing examiners with the PRC who will be presiding over this matter today. This case and this hearing involves an uncontested stipulation. Following the hearing, the responsibility of the hearing examiners will be to produce a certification of stipulation with a recommended disposition. This hearing today is being transcribed by a court reporter, Mr. David Lee. For the sake of that record, I'd like to start with entries of appearance from both parties, starting with Dish Wireless.
Thank you, Your Honor. Carol Clifford and Sola Lee on behalf of Dish Wireless DBA Gen Mobile.
Good morning to both of you. And Telecommunications Bureau staff.
On behalf of Telecommunications Bureau staff of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. With me, I also have staff, Mr. Evans, Mr. Olofinsao, and Mr. Brady, who will be testifying today. Thank you.
Had just an issue, just a small issue there with your video, Ms. Lang, and I think also possibly your audio. So I don't, if that comes up again, I'll let you know, but I think the
Okay.
record should.
Okay.
We have an Adrian Johnson who's entered the waiting room. Is he from one of the parties?
Yes, Your Honor, he's with Dish Wireless.
Okay, we'll admit him. Okay, so thank you to both parties. Good morning to both of you. As far as preliminary items this morning, we addressed one before we went on the record. I have just a couple of other items to mention, nothing that I think requires a great deal of discussion, but we talked about the mechanics of this public hearing at our pre-hearing conference on Tuesday, but just to reiterate, We'll start this hearing this morning with Mr. Yap, the petitioner's witness, and then we'll take Mr. Tolleson from staff. Although this hearing does involve an uncontested stipulation, and therefore any cross-examination would be friendly cross-examination, time is really not a factor this morning, and so we are going to still ask each party if you do have any questions on cross, and we'll give you a little bit of latitude, just in the interest of building a complete record on that. Next, and more importantly, I think, as we discussed at the pre-hearing conference, there are a handful of sections of testimony and exhibits that are confidential. And so I'm just going to reiterate this for the benefit of both witnesses and everybody present. If either party ends up feeling inclined to ask questions about that material, or if a witness wants to answer a question by referring to confidential material or by divulging that, I want you to notify Hearing Examiner Schaefer and myself first. Just tell us we're about to get into that. And then we will close the hearing for the purposes of YouTube. And we'll get those limited answers or those limited questions answered, and then we'll get back live on the YouTube stream. Again, the most important takeaway for the witnesses and for the attorneys is just, if you do end up asking any questions or answering any questions by referring to confidential material, let me know first. Any concerns or questions about anything I've just outlined?
No, Your Honor.
Any preliminary matters that we should discuss on the record before we get into the evidence?
Your Honor, and based on
Not from
comments earlier this morning, I will be amending the exhibit list to reflect that what we've identified as confidential exhibits 9 through 12 would be remarked as confidential versions of exhibits numbers 1, 2, and 3. So I will supplement the record with that after the hearing.
Okay. And that's fine. And just to clarify, so the way that the commission has handled exhibit lists in the past, it's not really a filing, it's more just for the benefit of your fellow parties. So it's really nothing that you need to update. I appreciate that. It's really just for you when you seek the admission, you're just seeking the admission of those limited exhibits. But that's helpful.
Thank you.
And seeing no further items, with that, Ms. Clifford, you can go ahead and call your first and I believe only witness.
Thank you. Dish Wireless calls Robert Yap.
Please swear in
Here,
witness.
present.
Will he be sworn, Your Honor?
Well, Mr. Lee will swear in.
I can't actually hear the court reporter.
Just a moment, please.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Yap, would you please raise your right hand? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give, no matter not opinion, should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Ms. Clifford.
Mr. Yap, would you please state your name for the record and provide your business address?
Robert Yap, 2004 Park Place, El Segundo, California.
I'm having a
Suite
little
A.
bit of trouble hearing you. Could you speak up a bit or turn up your mic?
Okay. Can you hear me now? Is this any better?
Yes, I think that's better. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Robert Yap. My business address is 2004 A Park Place, El Segundo, California.
Thank you. And how are you employed, sir?
I am the Senior Vice President of Dish Wireless, and I'm the head of the Gen Mobile unit.
Are you the Robert Yap who has filed direct, supplemental, and rebuttal testimony in this case?
Yes.
And sir, before we get into your testimony, I'd like to briefly touch on Dish Wireless filings in this case, because you've provided verifications and affidavits to support them. So for the record, I would like to identify Dish Exhibit number 4. Do you have in front of you Dish Wireless's petition for designation as an ETC?
I do. Yes.
And did you file an attestation with the petition attesting to the contents of the petition?
Yes, I did.
And are you offering the petition here and agreeing to answer questions about the petition?
Yes.
Okay. Regarding Dish Exhibit number 5, Do you have in front of you a Dish Wireless Amendment number 1 to the petition submitted on March 14, 2025?
I do.
And did you file an affidavit with the amendment affirming the facts and statements contained in the amendment?
Yes, I did.
And are you offering the amendment here and agreeing to answer questions about it?
Yes.
Okay, and finally, regarding the uncontested stipulation between the parties marked as Dish Exhibit number 6, do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And are you prepared to answer questions about the stipulations and to support it through testimony?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm turning to your testimony. Do you have a copy of what we've marked as Dish Exhibit number 1, your direct testimony, in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And regarding that testimony, was that document prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections or changes to your direct testimony?
I do not.
I'm sorry, could you speak up?
I do not.
Thank you. And if you were asked the questions posed in that testimony today, would your answers to those questions be the same?
Yes, except to the extent supplemented by other documents in this case.
And you're referring to your supplemental testimony and rebuttal testimony?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would offer Dish Exhibit number 1.
Thank you. Ms. Lang, I believe you've waived your objections to these exhibits for the stipulation, but any objection to the admission of Dish Exhibit 1? Ms. Lang, I think you might be having an issue with your video. You might double check that. But my understanding is you have no objection.
I apologize. Let's see if this will be better.
He's frozen. Judge.
Am I still frozen?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Hopefully I am thawed now, but we'll see.
Well, no objection from staff. Dish Wireless Exhibit 1 is admitted. Thanks, Ms. Clifford.
Thank you. You should have in front of you, Mr. Yap, a document marked Dish Exhibit number 2, your supplemental testimony.
Yes. Yes.
And was that document prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections or changes to your supplemental testimony?
I do not.
And if you were asked those questions posed in that supplemental testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, except as supplemented by other documents in this case.
Your Honor, we would offer Dish Exhibit number 2.
Any objection?
No objection.
Dish Wireless Exhibit 2 is admitted into the record.
And do you have in front of you, sir, a document marked Dish Exhibit number 3, your rebuttal testimony?
I do.
And was that testimony prepared by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections or changes?
I do not.
And if you were asked the same questions posed in that testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Your Honor, Dish offers Dish Exhibit number 3.
Any objection?
No objection.
Dish Wireless Exhibit 3 is admitted into the record.
So, Your Honor, that concludes the direct examination, with the exception of any questions you wish for me to pose to the witness regarding elements for approval of the stipulation.
Okay. Did I miss something? So your remaining exhibits, Ms. Clifford, are you going to offer those into evidence?
Your Honor, we marked the petition, the amendment, and the stipulation for identification only, but it was my understanding from your ruling that you were not needing that to be offered as an exhibit to the hearing.
How about exhibits 7 through 8E?
So, Your Honor, those are marked for identification only insofar as we wanted to provide them to you for possible examination of the witnesses, but we were assuming that we would have them admitted if they were referred to during the hearing.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Lang, any questions for the witness?
Staff does not have any cross-exam witness questions for Mr. Yap. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Good morning, Mr. Yap.
Good morning.
I have just a few questions for you. And I think most, if not all, of my questions are related to your direct testimony. So this is Dish Wireless Exhibit 1.
Okay.
Let me ask you first about you testify on pages 3 and 4. You talk a little bit about on page 4 in particular, you say Dish Wireless is using licensed wireless spectrum assets to build the nation's first cloud native open RAN based 5G broadband network. Can you tell me just in layman's terms what sort of the benefits, the unique benefits that brings to your customers?
So just for reference, I'm on the business and operations side of the Gen Mobile brand. I'm not a network person, but I am familiar with obviously this product. By having a cloud-based ORAN technology, we were able to update and optimize the towers in the cloud, allowing for quicker deployment, quicker adjustments to our network as needed for the consumers. And so this network will be the first of its kind in the United States, and is one of the obviously most updated technologies with regard to servicing wireless customers. We believe, and I think the technology is showing, that we can service those customers with high speed and reliability.
Okay. So do I understand then that essentially what you're testifying is the unique advantages, I guess, of your service offerings would be that you can provide faster service and more reliable service, you believe, than some of your competitors? Is that fair?
I don't think I have the data to have that discussion specifically, but that the technology itself allows us to have that flexibility. And our goal is obviously to continue to have highest performance and some of the fastest data speeds competitive with our other major carriers, with the other major carriers in the United States.
All right. Well, let me then, I guess, just sharpen the point. So I mean, one of the factors that the commission looks to when it grants or considers granting ETC designation are the unique advantages of the petitioner's service offering, as well as the unique disadvantages. So let me turn to those unique advantages. Just asking you, what are the unique advantages to Dish Wireless's service offerings?
I think that one of the key factors that allows us to provide excellent coverage is that we not only have our own unique cloud-based network, but we also have agreements with both T-Mobile and AT&T, where our service can fall over to their coverage as needed. And so we believe that we have one of the best coverage footprints in the country when you add those three together. And that's particularly useful in New Mexico because of some of the difficult coverage issues in a lot of the rural areas. We want to be able to service as many of them as possible. And we think that our service provides a bit of a unique opportunity for customers to the fail-safe of three networks when they're trying to make their telecommunications calls and internet activity.
Okay. And that goes to reliability of service?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any unique disadvantages to Dish Wireless's service offering? To your knowledge?
We don't believe so. We try to be very competitive and provide a great value to our consumers. And in that regard, specifically with the Gen Mobile brand, we do have plans starting at $10 all the way up to $60, allowing customers to choose the amount of data that they need, and so that they don't have to overpay for what they don't. And so we consider that one of our unique offerings as well, allowing people to kind of choose the amount of telecommunications they need.
Okay. Why will granting this particular ETC designation, why will that result in more consumer choice?
I think that it goes to the point of our different plans. Not only do we have the Gen Mobile plan, but we have other brands in our service. Not that those are at issue here today, but the unique offering that we provide to Lifeline is that flexibility to use your Lifeline benefit for a free offering with 4.5 gigs, or to be able to upgrade your plan on a month-to-month basis if you need it, or have extra cash or extra disposable income to be able to upgrade your service. We find that a lot of our customers use that flexibility so that if they have a particular event or a particular need, like a job search or a particular show that they want to watch on TV or a sports event, they can upgrade their plan for that period and then drop back down to the base service as needed. And we consider that one of the more unique opportunities for our customers to have service and buy service based on their budget and needs.
Thank you. Let me see if I scroll back up. Tell me a little bit, so the proposed service area in this case would include tribal lands, as you talk about in your testimony. Can you elaborate a little bit on Dish Wireless's experience to date in providing Lifeline service on tribal lands, I guess in other states?
Certainly. We have made a concerted effort here at Gen Mobile to reach out to Native American communities. We have several distributors who have reached out into tribal communities to ask for their support and authorization to reach out to their consumers. And we have several thousand customers who are already on service, who are qualified tribal members. We hope to do so in New Mexico as well. In that regard, we've reached out to other communities, including attending some of the larger, one of the larger powwows in Denver. And we've made connections there and have offered through that connection to support other powwows and reach out to those communities, both with in-person activities, but also by reaching out to their influencers and social media stars to get greater outreach into Native American communities.
Now, in connection with this particular petition for ETC designation, did Dish Wireless reach out to and make contact with any of the tribal entities in New Mexico about seeking Lifeline certification or ETC designation in New Mexico?
I don't believe we've made specific contact. Counsel, am I correct in that regard?
Well,
my lawyers, I don't believe we've contacted any specific tribes in New Mexico to address this petition. I understood that we excluded 2 specific areas that are served by tribal telecommunications companies at their request.
okay, and that is presumably a reference to the Mescalero tribal reservation, is that correct?
That's correct.
Let me see. Now, sticking with, I guess, the theme of your Dish Wireless's prior experience, I'm familiar with, I think, what is listed as the response to the bench request. It's, I think, listed as exhibit number 8B, if you have that.
What is it titled?
Well, updated status of petitions of ETC designations for Lifeline only. It's identified as exhibit 8B, but it also is listed as attachment A. So
I have a lot of documentation here. I've read through it last night, so I'm guessing that I'm hoping that I can address your question, but why don't you go ahead?
okay. Well, and I can talk to Ms. Clifford about admitting that, but I guess my question to you is, you talk about in your testimony about Dish Wireless being designated as an ETC in other states or territories. My question to you, has Dish Wireless ever been, has one of its petitions for ETC designation in the state ever been denied?
I do not believe so. And I have to think about this. So we do have 41 states approved. We are in various states of pending application with other states. There was, I think, one state that we effectively withdrew because we did not yet have powers in that state, and they asked us to wait until we did. But otherwise, we have not received a negative response on any of our applications.
Okay, and let me
Let's be clear, a denial. I mean, there are questions sometimes, but there's been no denial.
and that makes sense. Let me just stick with that last point that you made about there was a state that you may have withdrawn. I had a question just looking at this list again in Exhibit 8B for the state of Montana. Is that the one you're referring to in terms of having towers and whatnot?
Yes.
Okay, that answers that question. My next question, so one of the requirements for ETC designation, you talk about this on pages 14 to 15 of your direct testimony, and that's Exhibit 1, is the requirement to provide service throughout the designated service area. If this petition was granted, how soon does Dish Wireless anticipate that it would be able to offer and advertise its services statewide?
We anticipate that we'll need about a month to get all of the technical back office with USAC complete. And then we will be live and starting to work on adding agents and online advertising to New Mexico, probably within 6 weeks.
Okay, let me pivot a little bit to the stipulation. I mean, for demonstrative purposes, this was listed as Exhibit 6, but you're familiar with the stipulation. I don't really have very many questions. In fact, I don't have any questions really about the actual language that's in the stipulation. I'm more interested in the process. Can you tell me a little bit about the process that was followed to reach the stipulation? And just to give you context for it, one of the reasons is when the commission looks at stipulations, one of the criteria or one of the factors that are considered is whether or not the stipulation is a product of serious bargaining among capable individuals, something to that effect. And so I'm just looking to get a better sense of the process that you all followed to reach the stipulation.
I can tell you that it has been worked on for maybe close to 6 months plus on different issues as far as the supplemental testimony request. I believe that the commission's staff has been very thorough in asking us a lot of the questions. We've gone through 42 states or 41 states already, and the state of New Mexico has been very thorough in asking about our technology and our uniqueness as well as our offerings. In particular, there were several back and forth over issues such as the exclusion of the Mescalero tribes footprint at their request, as well as other issues, and my staff and the attorneys on the call have been keeping me updated with regard to it.
All right, that's helpful. Do you know, did Dish Wireless or staff make any particular concessions as part of reaching the stipulation, or is the stipulation more about sort of memorializing the staff's support for the stipulation after getting the answers that they were looking for?
I think it's more the latter, in that, you know, they wanted to make sure every of the steps that are required by the federal regulations was followed, as well as how we can prove that we support each of those particular factors. So I understood there to be a lot of questions regarding our facilities and the different factors within the USAC requirements to memorialize and prove that we have those pieces in place.
Okay. Just a couple of additional clarification questions. Let me pivot you over to your rebuttal testimony. So this is Exhibit 3. One question that I had, this is, I think both of my questions are going to be about page 13, again, of your rebuttal testimony. So you're asked this question, would Dish Wireless like to offer Lifeline service to those residing on federally recognized tribal lands? And you sort of identify a lot of those tribal governmental entities within the service area. And I guess my question was, does Dish Wireless have staff members who have worked with these specific tribal entities? Or is your experience with tribal entities strictly outside of New Mexico?
Our staff experience is currently outside of New Mexico. We have reached out to tribal members in Oklahoma, where we are licensed and have already begun onboarding tribal community members there. I know that we have distribution in our tribal footprint in Washington State. So we certainly have had experience with working tribes. Of course, tribes are all unique. And so we fully appreciate that once we are licensed in New Mexico, we will have to make outreach efforts to these communities in order to serve their consumers.
One other question, and you may have already answered this earlier. It's also possible you may not have, you may not be the right person to ask this question, but you refer to, this is the public version of your testimony. This is on page 13. You refer to the company's Greenfield 5G network that operates in a cloud native environment for customers within the coverage area. I'm not interested in sort of the mechanics of how that works. I'm just interested in, from the consumer's perspective, what are the advantages of that Greenfield 5G network, to the extent that you know?
I think part of the advantage of Dish Wireless in general is that we don't come into building the network having to adapt the 4G network to work with the 5G network and then also build that 5G network. There's a handoff and compatibility that often is involved as you move to the next generation of wireless technology. And so for us, we're focused on building just 5G towers. And so we're sort of skipping earlier generations of technology, which means for our consumers, when they buy a compatible device for our network, they'll be getting 5G speed exclusively when they're on our network. Now, I did mention to you that if we have lack of coverage, we do hand off to our partner network, but at least where we have direct coverage and good quality of coverage, those consumers will have 5G speed exclusively and should experience faster overall delivery of their data. And again, subject to their device capability, being able to handle that speed.
Okay, I guess my last question to you, this is both a requirement that we look at with respect to certifications, and then also one of the requirements for ETC designation. If you look at page 28 of your direct testimony, you're asked about Dish Wireless's presence as an ETC in New Mexico serving the public interest. And I read through that answer several times, and I just am hoping that you can crystallize for me exactly what it is that the commission should understand. Why is it that, what is it about granting this particular petition that is going to be in the public interest?
We believe strongly, if you look at the sort of history and DNA of the dish companies, so EchoStar dish companies, have always focused on servicing customers who need connectivity. And oftentimes, and if you look at our overall consumer base, our strength is in rural communities who do not have connectivity. When you talk about satellite TV and satellite internet through our brand HughesNet, those products are often most used by people who were otherwise not on network, whether it's by cable or by other connectivity. We have a history of reaching out to communities that are otherwise not connected. And Gen Mobile is part of that story. We not only work in the 41 states that we have, but we have made a great effort to reach out to tribal communities and rural communities as part of our overall brand. So the benefit to the consumer here in New Mexico is that one of the companies who's offering a competitive offer with lots of different choices as far as how to upgrade their plans is also an organization that has history and dedication to reaching out to rural communities as part of its mission and outreach to connect people across the country.
Thank you. And I thought that was my last question, but I do have just one more. One of the other requirements for ETC designation is that the petitioner needs to demonstrate that they will satisfy applicable consumer protection and service quality standards. Can you talk a little bit about that and Dish Wireless's commitment to do that?
Absolutely. We not only are committed to providing customers great connectivity, and again, that kind of goes to us not only having our own network, but also backup networks in T-Mobile and AT&T. We are also dedicated to making sure that the organization onboards customers who are qualified and with measures in place to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse of the Lifeline program.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have for you right now, Mr. Yap. Hearing Examiner Schaefer, any questions for the witness?
Yes, just a few follow-up questions, much in the line of what you were asking about, John, or Hearing Examiner. First of all, Mr. Yap, are you joining us from a hallway?
Unfortunately, yes, I'm actually on vacation with my family, and I did not have the ability to have a private room.
Okay, well, I just would encourage you for any future hearings to maybe have a more established interface. The laptop, I believe, or phone that you're on is bouncing around and is, I think, causing maybe some bit of vertigo for the people on the call. So just for the future, I think it would be advisable to have something more stable. Also, just to remind you that you're the witness, not your attorney. So when questions are asked, it's important for you to just answer as fully and truthfully as you can. So now turning to some substantive points that Hearing Examiner Kreienkamp mentioned. One of the things I've been curious about is the entire program. Now, this relates to another aspect of public interest that Hearing Examiner Kreienkamp mentioned, which is reliability. And so I'm wondering, are you aware of or cognizant of any potential changes to the federal ETC program and how that may affect your service to New Mexico or other states?
I'm not aware of any changes to the federal ETC program at this time. As far as if there are not funds anymore provided through the federal ETC program, Gen Mobile and its other Dish affiliated services and brands will continue to service the consumers in New Mexico through the paid service that I had described, including our plans starting at $10 a month.
Okay, thank you. I think for us, it's important to know what the longevity of the program may be or how any potential changes might be currently discussed vis-a-vis the federal Lifeline program. The next question I have relates to outreach. Does your company, it seems like you, on the one hand, wait to do outreach until you're approved, but then on the other hand, you do outreach beforehand. So I'm trying to understand the distinction between the two and what constitutes maybe pre-approval outreach versus post-approval of the designation outreach.
I guess I'm not sure what you're referring to when you talk about pre-approval outreach.
So you were describing your outreach to, in general, Native American communities, and you described some limitations of that outreach to New Mexico communities. So I'm wondering what constitutes pre-approval outreach versus post-approval outreach?
Sure. The initial outreach that we have done is through more general Native American organizations. So we did attend a powwow, but there were some 30 states represented as far as Native American communities at that event. We were there to outreach to Native American communities and pointed out to them the states that we have qualification in for Native American or tribal service. And so we weren't specifically excluding New Mexico tribes from that. If they were at that event, we would certainly discuss with them. But we can't begin onboarding people, obviously, until we get approval from the commission.
So your outreach is essentially marketing to communities once you have the service designated.
Correct.
Okay, and so you don't really do any outreach to any communities in a state before you achieve your designation, or before the company achieves its designation?
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay. The next question I have, just maybe it's the final question, but it relates again a bit to one of hearing examiner Krainkamp's questions about the technology in use. Is there anything novel or new or maybe untested about this technology that you may be deploying in New Mexico that could cause any kind of reliability gaps or issues, or is this something that has been used and tested in other jurisdictions?
Our technology in our network has approximately 80% coverage of the United States population at this time. And these technologies, what we're talking about as far as the ORAN cloud native network, as well as the handoff to the T-Mobile and AT&T networks as needed, has already been deployed for several years in various states, and at this point at almost 80% of the U.S. population. So we do believe that the technology is tested. Obviously, it continues to be deployed, and as it's deployed, we have to test and tune the network. But overall, the technology has already been deployed, again, in almost 80% of the country.
Okay, so just another way to, I guess, express my question is there's nothing particularly new or novel that you'll be deploying in New Mexico that hasn't been done before?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that's all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hearing Examiner Schaefer. Ms. Clifford, just one note about, we talked a little bit about these exhibits that are marked for demonstrative purposes. The two that stand out to me that I think we should have admitted, and either you can seek their admission or we could potentially admit them as commissioned exhibits, but it'd be easier if you did it, would be 8B, which is the list of the petitions, and then 8C, which is the consumer complaints, just because those relate closely to two of the criteria we're looking for, some of the questions I asked Mr. Yap. But otherwise, that aside, it's over to you for redirect.
Your Honor, following up on your comment, we would offer Exhibit 8B, which is Dish Wireless's response to the amended bench request order attachment A. And we would offer Exhibit 8C, which is Dish Wireless's responses to the amended bench request order attachment B.
Thank you. Ms. Lang, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
Both
Thank
of
you.
those exhibits, that being 8B and 8C, are admitted into the record. Thank you, Ms. Clifford.
Thank you. Mr. Yap, I'd like to follow up very briefly on some of the questions posed by the hearing examiners for clarification. Does Dish Wireless or any of its affiliates currently have customers in New Mexico?
Yes, we do.
And would that allow you any greater ability to expand service here if you were authorized to provide Lifeline service?
We do absolutely believe that we will grow our consumer base through the Lifeline program if authorized in New Mexico.
And that would include expanding marketing efforts within New Mexico?
Yes,
And using your existing service and staffing in New Mexico to expand your offerings if you were granted Lifeline service.
though we don't have existing staff in New Mexico, we do anticipate partnering with distribution organizations to add additional in-person activities in New Mexico to advertise the Gen Mobile brand, but also digital methods as well.
So if somebody in New Mexico currently wants to buy a service and buy a phone, is there a place where they can go to obtain that in New Mexico?
Yes, we have authorized retailers throughout the country, including New Mexico, who can activate our service and purchase devices. They're not employees of the organization, they're distribution partners.
I see. Thank you. And does your partnership with T-Mobile and AT&T, will that assist you in deploying service more quickly in New Mexico as you plan to build out your own network here?
Yes, consumers who bring to us devices that are only compatible with the T-Mobile or AT&T network can also activate our services as on those carriers through our reseller agreements, so that we can actually activate those consumers in state as well.
And there are some confidential aspects to your testimony that have to do with network design, and I don't want to touch on anything that's been identified as confidential. But I wanted to ask you a follow-up question about the network design in very general terms, and that is, does the design that you've described allow your company to implement upgraded services and maintenance? Does it allow your company to maintain those services more quickly because of the network design?
We do believe that the ability to both have our own network as well as underlying carrier partnerships that allow us to use their networks as needed helps us maintain strong connectivity for the consumer.
And is that what in traditional telecommunications are services that are called network operations?
Yes.
And that's done through the cloud rather than through a traditional fiber or copper-based system?
For our home towers, yes, we use the cloud-based technology.
And regarding hearing examiner Kreinkamp's questions about your interactions or Dish Wireless's interactions with staff, were the questions and answers you presented in your supplemental and rebuttal testimony, did those result from or derive from questions posed by staff to the company?
Yes.
And do you recall whether there were any informal conferences with staff prior to Dish filing its responses to the amended bench request order?
Yes.
And did those interactions with staff help facilitate the negotiation of the stipulation?
Yes.
That's all I had, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clifford. That was very helpful. Mr. Yap, I just had a couple follow-up, I think maybe two follow-up questions. One was, Ms. Clifford asked you just a minute ago, if somebody in New Mexico currently wants to buy service and buy a phone, is there a place they can go to obtain that in New Mexico? And you talk about having authorized retailers throughout the country, including New Mexico. I'm just hoping you can give me, I guess, just a more concrete idea of what that might look like. Those authorized resellers, those are not confidential. Is that correct? I mean, you can tell me publicly who those resellers are, or at least some of them.
So, and I should say, we have authorized retailers throughout the country who are on our system who can refill and activate. Some of them only do refills. My understanding is that we do have New Mexico, but I would have to pull some information that I could supplement to see if those particular stores are still active. The way our authorized retailer system works is that sometimes there are these wireless shops that are what we call multi-carrier. And so they may represent several different brands and let the consumer choose the right fit for them, whether it's device compatibility or plan offering. And so we've historically had authorized retailers in almost every state. I'd have to check on New Mexico specifically and see if those authorized retailers are currently active.
And that's fine. I don't know that that's important enough for me to ask you to follow up, but I just thought I would ask. And then my other question to you, sort of a marriage between one of the questions that Ms. Clifford asked you and then what Hearing Examiner Schaefer asked you. I think Hearing Examiner Schaefer's last line of questioning related to sort of new technology that you potentially might be deploying, whether or whether the technology that you're deploying is something that you've deployed elsewhere in the country. Ms. Clifford also asked you if you had customers in New Mexico. You answered yes. So my understanding between those two questions is this technology that you're going to be using to serve these Lifeline customers is largely already here in New Mexico. You've already been using it. Is that a fair understanding of your testimony?
I think that when we're talking about outside of the Lifeline universe, and I'm just actually pulling some data to see the count we have. So the technology we have already is being used throughout the country. I don't have the specific New Mexico network coverage and towers on hand, but we do, as a Gen Mobile brand, have 44 New Mexico customers currently that are on one of the reseller networks for us, which I believe is on the T-Mobile network. And so we do have some consumers there on the Gen Mobile brand. My understanding is the Boost brand also has customers in the state of New Mexico. Which particular customers are on a reseller offering, which is either on T-Mobile or AT&T versus our home network coverage with the option to roam. I don't have that data in front of me at this moment.
Thank you. Ms. Clifford, any follow-up questions based on what I just asked?
No, Your Honor.
Hearing Examiner Schaefer, anything final?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. And Ms. Lang, any final questions?
Nothing from staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I believe that concludes your testimony this morning, Mr. Yap. Thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time, and you can get back to your vacation, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Ms. Clifford, I think that covers your case, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think there's any remaining exhibits you needed to admit.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. So Ms. Lang, over to Telecommunications Bureau staff. You can call your first and only witness.
Thank you. Staff calls Brady Tolson.
Lee, whenever you're ready, if you want to swear in the witness, that'd be great.
Mr. Tolson, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Tolson. Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Brady Tollison, and I'm with the Telecommunications Bureau with the New Mexico PRC.
And you answered my second question, so that's perfect. So as part of your duties, did you review the application in the present matter?
I did.
And did you prepare direct testimony for this proceeding?
I did.
And do you have with you or before you a copy of what has been labeled Staff Exhibit Number 1?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That would be the direct testimony of Brady L. Tollison.
And was this testimony prepared by you?
Yes.
And if I were to ask you the same questions today, would your answers be the same?
They would, yes.
And are there any corrections to your testimony today?
No, there's not.
Okay, and are the answers true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Staff moves to admit what has been labeled Staff Exhibit 1 into the record.
Any objection?
No objection.
Thank you. Seeing no objection, Staff Exhibit 1 is admitted into the record.
And I pass the witness for cross-examination. Thank you.
Ms. Clifford, any questions for Mr. Tolson?
No questions, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Tolson.
Good morning.
I have just a few questions for you. Primarily related to the stipulation, but a few others as well. Let's start with, just because it's was brought up, I think, towards the end of the previous witness's testimony. Let's talk a little bit about the negotiation process that led to the stipulation. Just put that on the record. Was the stipulation, I should say, a product of serious bargaining by capable, knowledgeable parties? If so, why?
I would say so, yes. Staff and the party worked together through informal meetings, informal emails. Also, we had discovery questions as well. And then I would say all of my lingering concerns were answered in supplemental testimony that they provided. And I think that's well reflected in the stipulation that we were able to come to an agreement on all the information that I wanted, even some additional information, and we came to an agreement that everything was met.
Okay. And so just to clarify, I asked Mr. Yap a question, and I'll ask you the same one. I think the answer to this question, I think I have the answer to this question, but the stipulation and the agreement that was reached, I interpret it more as memorializing staff support of the petition once all of your questions had been answered and all the information you needed had been provided to you, rather than some major concessions on the part of the company. Is that correct?
Yes, you are correct in your thinking, Mr. Hearing Examiner. That is how it came to be.
Okay, great. Okay, I guess another question comes up. Does the stipulation, in your view, violate any important regulatory principles?
Not from my knowledge.
All right, so now let me just ask you some questions about the petition and the standards for ETC designation. And let me start with a question that I'm pretty sure I have the answer for, but there's a series of questions in your testimony, your direct testimony, asking whether Mr. Yap's direct testimony addressed particular requirements of the commission's rules. My question to you, with respect to all of those questions, is staff satisfied that Dish Wireless has satisfied the requirements of the commission's rules?
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you then, I think one of the major questions I have about ETC designation, what in staff's view are the unique advantages of Dish Wireless's service offerings?
Sure. And I believe I addressed this in my testimony. Let me just bring that up. Let's see here. So from staff's perspective, this Open RAN technology that they use, it kind of from staff's analysis, it deals away with some legacy hardware and brings more to software as far as operations, and brings some efficiencies that maybe some hardware do not have. And they have the ability to switch networks as far as for emergency conditions, things like that. And yeah, that's from the staff perspective, that's the major advantage that I can see. Just their ability to adapt and efficiencies operationally. It was really hard to see any kind of disadvantage, but from staff's perspective, possibly could come from a standpoint of brand recognition, They could face some difficulties getting the word out there about who they are and the different brands, but they may not. That is the only disadvantage that staff could see from our perspective.
And that particular disadvantage is addressed, at least to a certain extent, is it not, by the requirement that all of these ETCs have to advertise their services throughout the service area? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now let me get back to your answer about efficiencies and the ability to switch networks for emergency
Sure.
conditions. This is similar to the questions I was asking Mr. Yeah. What does that translate to for your typical consumer, right? When we talk about increased efficiencies, the ability to switch networks, I interpret that as if you have a cell phone and you're using your cell phone, you're going to have more reliable service. Is that essentially what you mean? Is that how that benefit would translate over to Dish Wireless's prospective Lifeline customers?
I guess what I'm saying there in my testimony is that these efficiencies tend to lead to better service for customers usually because having the capabilities to provide service in emergencies is a particularly big one. And as I've addressed, they're well positioned to do that.
Okay. Let me ask you about consumer choice. So this is
Sure.
one of the requirements for this is one of the elements the commission looks to as far as whether or not an ETC designation is in the public interest. And I think I've asked you this in other cases. I don't believe I've asked you this here, but can you tell me essentially what does staff think that consumer choice means in the context of the commission's public interest review? Do you understand what I'm asking you there?
Yes, I understand, but may I address that in terms of the Lifeline program itself?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So in terms of the Lifeline program itself, staff views choice as a significant aspect of ETC designation because there used to be a plan called the Affordable Connectivity Program, and that's what we call the ACP. Dish actually was a provider of ACP, meaning that now that it's gone, there are customers that may be out there without any kind of coverage, any kind of budget plan options, which has also translated to New Mexico not having all that many Lifeline providers. If you were to do some looking around on the Lifeline website and just see what your options are, generally when you look in New Mexico, you're going to have a couple of options. From staff's perspective, we think you should have more than a couple options. We believe that customers should have the choice to choose the service that they think is best for their needs. Okay. Yep.
Let me ask you, you talk about budget plan options. One of the questions I have, I understand that the subsidies, I understand the subsidy amount that the ETCs receive with their customers, and that I guess the customers receive. These various ETC providers, if you have multiple ETCs in a particular service area, do the actual charges that they charge their customers, do those vary, or are those always essentially the same amount?
The Lifeline has a standard has standard rates, but these providers also typically provide a free plan besides the budget plans as well.
Okay. So if you have multiple ETCs in a service area, their offerings are not going to differ in terms of price. They're going to differ in terms of I guess the other details of their service offerings.
Yes, one way also that you can check differences between them is they tend to have different data offerings. That would be one of the big differences, I would say.
Then bringing that back here to Dish Wireless. So if you're a customer, who's going to be on Lifeline, and you're looking, between the various options, the benefits of Dish Wireless's program is that, at least one of their biggest benefits is that they have greater, they have greater reliability in emergency situations. Is that essentially their biggest contribution in terms of customer choice?
I would say their technology is one of the big aspects because it does provide customers service through other means than their current provider.
Okay, let me ask you about one of the exhibits that was admitted was Dish Wireless number 8C. This is the matrix of consumer complaints responsive to the bench request. And I'm not asking about any of the details here, but one of the requirements for ETC designation, as you know, is and I asked Mr. Yap about this, essentially the petitioner going to comply with applicable consumer protection laws, things of that nature. Staff has this information in Exhibit 8C. Based on that information, you also have access to the testimony that the company has provided. Based on all that information, should the commission be comfortable that if it grants this ETC designation, that Dish Wireless will satisfy all of those, essentially consumer protection laws?
Yes.
Let me just go through and make sure I've asked all the questions. I guess one question I have, this is a statewide petition. It includes tribal lands as well. I'm assuming the answer to this question is no, but is the Telecommunications Bureau, are you aware, obviously outside of the Mescalero Apache Reservation, have you heard anything from any of the tribes in the service area? Any concerns at all with the petition?
To my knowledge, no, there has been no communication from tribal entities.
Okay, and then my last question to you is the same question I asked Mr. Yap. What I intended my last question to be to Mr. Yap, and that was essentially the public interest. If you're asked this question in your direct, I want you to answer it again. Why is granting this particular petition and as well the stipulation? Why is that in the public interest?
Sure. And I'd just like to repeat my earlier point that from staff's perspective, it is all about choice. We want customers in New Mexico to have access to affordable telecommunications services. And by allowing Dish to enter this market as a lifeline provider, we're providing customers an additional option and could potentially give them better service, lower rates, or just personal preference.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions for you. I appreciate your testimony. Hearing
you.
Examiner Schaefer, any questions for Mr. Tolson?
Yes, thank you, Hearing Examiner Kleinkamp. Good morning, Mr. Olson. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. Just a few questions generally. For edification, I ask, how many of these lifeline cases have you worked on or been a part of or been the lead on before?
I would have to look back in the record. I believe this may not be correct because I don't have that information in front of me, but I would say 3 or 4.
Okay. Now, in your experience, could you tell us maybe just what risks are with this designation? Are there any risks?
From staff's perspective, there's no particular risks that we highlight. In a capitalist economy, it's all about competition, so there's certainly risk there.
Risk for the company.
Correct.
But you don't see any risk here for the consumer.
Well, if the company were to have any issues, then I imagine that would trickle down to the customer.
Okay, that might be a segue into a few other questions I had. But before we got to that point, is there the discount or the subsidized rate, does that ever result in a lower quality of service in your experience? That is to say, or maybe even here in this particular case, could it yield a lower quality of service? And I don't mean the offerings, the number minutes of data, or let's say roaming or the service area, those kinds of service offerings that could be expanded or reduced depending on the price of the contract or the fee. But is there, in your mind, a practice or a risk where the telecommunications provider provides a lower quality of service to subsidized customers?
I think that's an important question that we should take into account in each of these Lifeline cases, because at some point, that's going to become more critical to ask. Right now, the way I see it, we need more competitors in the market. But it's fair to ask, or is if at some point will that dilute competition? So it's a really good question, but at this time, from staff's perspective, we don't see a risk of that.
Okay, thank you. Now, the other thing, I think, just maybe to delineate or confirm or ascertain, with your expertise and your experience here as a witness in this case, is uh, do you think that the Lifeline program will be hampered by infrastructure constraints? That is to say that there's one constraint, which is cost. And it's my understanding that the Lifeline program tries to reduce those barriers on a cost basis to expand coverage. And we spoke briefly with the witness, Mr. Yap, around the kind of technology that is the infrastructure, whether that's software or hardware, that's being used to support this program in New Mexico. Do you see any risks or constraints here that might limit the ability of Dish Wireless as a Lifeline designated provider with respect to infrastructure constraints in New Mexico? Essentially, what I'm asking is, you live here, obviously, and in New Mexico, we have constraints around mountains and towers and just large tracts of rural areas where a lot of these potential Lifeline customers may reside. And I'm just wondering if you have had any thoughts, or to what extent this was an issue in this case, vis-a-vis the technology that Dish Wireless is intending to use, and future expansion or reliability issues with its potential Lifeline customers.
Sure. So I don't want to get too far into that because I didn't really address it in my testimony, and there are some engineering aspects that I want to be sure to give you correctly. So if I could supplement that answer for you at a later time.
Sure. I think that it doesn't have to be, like you said, too technically detailed. I think what I'm getting at, and what I think hearing examiner Camp is getting to here, are public interest issues. And I'm focused on this particular question with reliability and just, let's say, longevity of the designation, and how that may affect customers in the next several years. Now, I just have a couple other questions, and maybe it could be just one question, but the stipulation, not necessarily your stipulation, but you're identified in the stipulation, and a lot of the points that are, let's say, articulated as satisfying commission staff are written in such a way that it's written in such a way to say that Dish Wireless has demonstrated, or Dish Wireless has committed to, or Dish Wireless has promised, almost, maybe promised wasn't the right word, but committed, And so I'm wondering the relationship between demonstration or commitment and your satisfaction as Commission Telecommunications Bureau staff. I'm not sure if that question makes sense, but what I'm trying to get at is it merely just a paperwork exercise, these demonstrations or commitments, or was there something more to the demonstration or more to the commitment that provided you the comfort and satisfaction to move ahead with the stipulation?
Simply, I just feel that we analyzed the federal rule, and considering all the information provided, we felt like that was fulfilled via paperwork or documents that they provided. Yes.
Okay, and maybe my final question is that I believe you said at one point that there were some matters that required more information or more demonstration from the applicant Dish Wireless before you felt comfortable in reaching the stipulation. Could you just describe those points briefly and how they were resolved?
Would you be able to direct me to which page I'd address those?
Oh, I thought you maybe said that verbally in testimony today, that there were some outstanding issues originally that you were able to find satisfaction as staff. So I'm not sure if you had no problems with the applicant up to and including the stipulation, or if there were certain issues with the application that you wanted more information for before reaching the stipulation.
Oh, so everything additional that I wanted was addressed in their supplemental testimony, and
Okay.
that I found that all to be satisfactory.
Okay. That's it. Those are all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hearing Examiner Schaefer. I think at this juncture, before I let you go, Mr. Tolson, I think I want to take just a quick 10-minute break.
Sure.
Just a quick 10-minute recess. When we come back, we'll do redirect. Any final questions from the hearing examiners, and then I think we'll wrap it up. So we'll be off the record until about 10:25. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Judge, was witness Yap saying ORAN?
Let me see exactly what that abbreviation is. It was RAN. I know it's RAN.
RAN?
RAN, yeah. Let me see. I have it flagged here somewhere. Open, yeah, probably was ORAN because I know it's Open RAN. Open RAN based 5G. Yeah, that's what I have.
Thank
So
you.
when he abbreviated, probably was ORAN. Okay, everybody ready to get back on the record? Finish up.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Uh,
Mr. Herring.
Mr. Lee?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go back on the record. The time is now 10:24. And we just finished with hearing examiner Schaefer's questions for Mr. Tolleson. I do want to circle back, Mr. Tolleson, on one final question, because we've touched on this and I feel like we probably haven't been very clear with the question. Or at least I'm not clear about your answer. And here's my struggle. So why don't I direct you to page 30 of your direct testimony?
Okay, I'm there.
Okay, and look at this answer starting on line 3. You say, by increasing the availability of service providers in these areas, the designation promotes consumer choice and fosters competition. And here's where I have a hard time. So consumer choice is one of the requirements or one of the elements that the commission looks to, right? As part of this public interest test. And the answer here is that we're increasing the availability of service providers in these areas, and that's how we promote consumer choice. But where I get lost is it seems like in any ETC case, by definition, granting it would bring in an additional service provider in an area, right? Because if we do that, if we grant the petition, by definition, you're bringing in another competitor into the marketplace. And
Correct.
so if that's the effect of bringing in another ETC, what is the meaning of consumer choice?
I guess I'm a little confused here because, as I mentioned before, there's not very many lifeline providers in the state. So yes, I would say that additional choice would be critical from an economic standpoint.
How many other ETCs are designated statewide right now, to the best of your knowledge?
I would have to get back to you with an answer on that. I don't have it in my testimony.
Well, just because you alluded to that before, Ms. Lang, let's consider that bench request 1. If you could come back with a list and a number of how many statewide ETCs there are.
Yes, Your Honor.
And that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Tolleson, for humoring me with that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ms. Lang, any questions on redirect?
No, thank you.
Okay. Hearing examiner Schaefer, any final follow-up?
No, hearing examiner Cronenkamp, thank you.
Let's see. Oh, Ms. Clifford, any final questions?
No,
for
Your
Mr.
Honor. Thank you very much.
Mr. Tolleson, sir, you are excused. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I appreciate both of your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I believe, Ms. Lang, that's all of your witnesses and all of your exhibits.
That is correct.
Okay, so with that, that concludes the evidentiary portion of the hearing today. While we're still on the record, let's briefly address briefing. In these stipulation cases, as I think we mentioned at the pre-hearing conference earlier this week, it's common not to require the parties to submit briefing. I do think, though, that the parties would still benefit in this case from a little bit of briefing just as to the legal requirements for ETC designation, because those can be a bit dense, as we mentioned earlier this week. So I mean, I guess the specific question, and you're welcome, the parties are welcome to submit a joint brief. So it doesn't have to be individual. It's up to you on that. Essentially, just touching on the legal standards that the commission uses. You're welcome to touch on any other subjects you feel so inclined to address, but essentially the important item would just be to sort of explicate those legal requirements for the benefit of our certification stipulation. As far as deadlines for that goes, I think we're happy to give you as much time as you need. I mean, the standard default deadline in the commission's rules for initial briefs is 20 days after the filing of the transcript. We're happy to stick with that. If you'd rather not set a deadline, we're fine with that too. I don't know if having a deadline is helpful for you all. I would turn that over, I guess, first to Ms. Clifford.
I think we can work with the 20-day deadline post transcript.
Ms. Lang, is that acceptable to you as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and we appreciate that. If you do need more time, just let us know. But I think we would benefit just from that bit of briefing. Hearing Examiner Schaefer, any other subjects that you think we would benefit from briefing on?
I think maybe no, Your Honor. I think the issues we've discussed would be sufficient.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So staff has the bench request, but also in testimony, Mr. Tolleson offered to supplement issues regarding engineering and technologies with regard to the terrain, et cetera. Is that would the hearing examiner still like staff to do that, or just to clarify?
That's a good question, Ms. Lang. Let me turn that over to my colleague, Mr. Schaefer. Hearing Examiner Schaefer, do you want that additional testimony? Sort of up to you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as long as it just is brief, topical, and discusses potential reliability issues or constraints regarding the physical infrastructure that's hosting the ETCs. So that would be helpful, I think, for the commission.
Just for dish or all ETCs, or in general? Is this a general?
Yes, general. This is general. This is
Okay.
a general. Yeah, not ETC by ETC.
Okay. And is there a deadline for this?
Well, that's a good question, Ms. Lang. That's exactly where I was about to go. Again, that's sort of up to you and your witnesses, whatever you think is reasonable. If you want to stick to that 20-day period, the same one for briefing, that would be fine. Gives you a little bit of extra time beyond the 20 days.
I think, yes, I think staff can manage that. 20 days after filing of transcripts? Okay, thank you.
And I would encourage you, to the extent you're able, to make sure that Ms. Clifford sort of sees that before you file it. And that way, if she wants to raise any concerns or any objections, she can do that.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So with that, are there any final items from either party before we conclude the hearing?
Your Honor, just following up on the last point, I suppose the question about the terrain of New Mexico and the challenges that presents for networks could be seen as bearing on the application itself, DISH's application. Are either of the hearing examiners interested in hearing DISH speak to its experience with this kind of network construction in similar environments?
Yes, I mean, I think the way that I would approach it, unless Hearing Examiner Schaefer has any objections, essentially, Dish Wireless should feel free to respond to that same bench request in its specific context. And you can also speak to your understanding of the competitors in the marketplace, how many there are, what kind of need there is. And that way both parties have an opportunity just to weigh in on that. I don't anticipate that you would, have any disagreements, but that way you have an opportunity to weigh in. Hearing Examiner Schaefer, is that acceptable to you?
Yes, yes. And I would just also maybe say that I don't think the commission is interested in a detailed or belabored discussion of infrastructure constraints in mountainous states or rural areas, for example. I think what the commission is interested in is reliability and ensuring that customers who participate here will not be somehow or that there's little risk, or I think we're concerned about reliability risk. So I think approaching it from that angle is helpful.
May we refer to that as bench request 2?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. And if the parties need more time for that, feel free to, file a motion, and we will happily extend that deadline. Let's see, and then hang on after we go off the record so we can discuss how we're going to get those confidential exhibits, Ms. Clifford, over to our court reporter. But with that out of the way, any other final items to address while we are on the record? Okay, seeing none. So thank you to both parties. Hearing Examiner Schaefer and I extend our thanks to both of you for your participation and professionalism. We appreciate it. To both witnesses, and with that, this hearing is adjourned and we're off the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
But hang
Thank you,
on,
everyone.
the attorneys, at least the attorneys hang on. Mr. Lee, when you are ready, sir, we just have one quick item to chat with you about.
I'm ready.
Okay.
We are.
We're off the record? Oh,
Yes.
wait a minute. Yeah,
Oh.
this is